Welcome to Discovering Creativity. I'm Caitlin Pierce, and this is,
Hi, I'm Jonathan Vihar.
and today we're going to be talking about creativity and one's creative journey into being a professional in the industry. So, my first question for you is about your career journey. So, it's about like how do you got to where you are today, like your degree, employment, what you want to do.
Sure. I started. I started my collegiate education as an engineering student. I really wanted to be a naval architect. I wanted to design yachts. It turns out that I can't do math, and so Calculus 2 was the end of my engineering career. And so I transferred to communication because I decided that I wanted to be a copywriter in an advertising agency, primarily because I thought that advertising was the only place where you could actually be creative in the workplace. It turns out that I'm very wrong. I was very wrong about that. I've learned since. But I did that for about 5 years and kind of hated it. I ended up working for a couple of ad agencies that were pretty stressful. Mm-hmm. And the second one I ended up calling the Ulcer Factory. And because it was just like every morning I just wake up and it's like, oh, I have to go to work and do this again. And just like the stress and the pressure. And it was really not a lot of fun, but I didn't know what else to do. Mm-hmm. And so I found myself. So I lived in Columbus, Ohio at the time, working at an ad agency. I found myself in Los Angeles, and we were shooting a television commercial. I was there to supervise, and while I was there, and this was 1992, riots broke out in Los Angeles after a trial that was very unpleasant. And so there were basically riots broke out, 600 buildings on fire. People were shooting at people. People were shooting at firefighters. It was crazy. And so I kind of found myself in a city that I didn't know, surrounded by a situation that I didn't understand, wondering if I was going to make it out alive. Mm-hmm. Spoiler, I did make it out alive. Yeah. Good news. But so I got home, and right about the same time, one of my best friends from high school just passed away very suddenly. Got pneumonia, and 7 days later was dead. And so I found myself at his funeral in a church where 10 months earlier I had watched him get married. And so I kind of got this message through all these things that were happening that you're not going to live forever. Mm-hmm. And so what do you want your legacy to be? And I'm pretty clear that I did not want my legacy to be a bunch of bad 30-second television spots. So I was kind of wrestling with what do I do? And I had taken a class in creativity a few years before in Buffalo at Buffalo State University, and I found the class fascinating. And it was a class that was recommended to me by somebody at who I worked with, and she said, "I'm taking this class on creativity." I'm like, "A class on creativity? You can't learn creativity. What are you talking about?" And so I ended up prove her wrong. I took this course, and what it was it was a class where people heard from other folks who were in the creativity business, or applied creativity in their roles and their jobs. And that's when I discovered there are other places to be creative, not just advertising. Mm-hmm. So I was talking to a friend and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, why don't you just do that program in creativity you've been talking about for years? And I'm like, oh, okay. So I went back to grad school, and my intention going in was I wanted to be a new product idea generation facilitator. I wanted to help people come up with the next big product ideas. And halfway through the training program, I discovered this notion of training. And so it was a class and team teaching, and we were teaching other people about creative thinking, creative problem solving. And I got hooked on it. I loved watching the light bulb go on over people's heads when they realized that they could solve their own problems and they could help other people solve problems too. And so I graduated from that program and did both of those things. I did a lot of idea generation facilitation. I did a lot of teaching and training in creative problem solving, creative thinking, which sort of expanded into a focus on innovation, which expanded into a focus on leadership. And that's where I've spent the last 30 years of my life for various organizations. So I worked for the Creative Education Foundation, which is founded by Alex Osborne, the guy who coined the term brainstorming and invented creative problem solving. I worked with another person in a consulting firm. I founded and co-owned a consulting company for 14 years. um, all around leadership and innovation and creative problem solving. And then after 14 years of co-owning that company, I kind of decided I needed to do something different.
Mhm.
And so I joined the Center for Creative Leadership, which is really focused on leadership. And I thought, all right, I'm just going to focus on leadership. And of course, I became a subject matter expert there on innovation and creative thinking. And so I did both of those things. Um, and then I got an opportunity to work for the Dale Carnegie organization. Dale Carnegie is the guy who wrote the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And so they hired me on to be their vice president of products. And so I got to work with a team, managing products, creating new products, launching new products, and just learned a ton. And left there at the end of 2019. And since then, I've been working on my own, doing training, facilitation, and working for all sorts of organizations.
Wow, that sounds like you've done quite a lot to get to where you are.
Yeah, I guess so. It's been a fun journey.
Yeah, I kind of have a similar thing with how I started out my undergraduate degree. I started in business,
Mhm.
and one semester, just accounting, I could not understand at all. So I ended up switching over to psychology and now taking my master's in educational psychology. So that's pretty interesting that we kind of both had that maybe math isn't the place for me kind of moment.
Yeah, maybe not. So
Yeah. So you kind of, in a sense, answered it as well with your career journey, but about a specific or significant moment in your life that contributed towards your path towards creativity, like how you mentioned your friend
yeah.
passing away and how that kind of helps lead you to be like, hey, this isn't exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, for me that was that was sort of the moment where I realized I had to do something.
Hmm.
And so there's kind of two things. One of them, so my I was raised by two people who are professional musicians, right? So my father was a high school choir director, and my mother still is a classical music composer, right? So she writes music, and so like that sort of musical arts based creativity was sort of always around in my head. Um, but growing up, I was fascinated by cars and boats. And and when I tell my parents I want to be go into engineering, they're kind of like, okay, we don't know what that means, but we support that. So I was kind of like the black sheep of my family because
Hmm.
I like wanted to get a real job. Uh, so that was kind of always in the environment, and I don't know why like that became the thing that I was interested in, other
Hmm.
than the fact that like it was cool. It was a lot of fun, and I think it was I was working my first job in my first advertising agency. I worked for a guy who sort of ran the ad agency's brainstorming sessions. And he invited me, and I was just a young idiot just out of school. And he said, "Hey, you should come to one of these sessions. I think you might enjoy it." And like the opportunity to defer judgment and come up with a whole bunch of ideas was just so much fun. Right. And being the young guy in the room who didn't know anything, who was just like throwing these ideas out there. And like, there were some non-verbal judgments from people like, what are you talking about? Like, or I do remember this one. I suggest an idea and somebody's like, that already exists. I was like, no, we're not judging. But I love that. I just loved the opportunity to sit around and throw a bunch of ideas. And I think that that's the thing that for me was like, I want to do this a lot more.
That's actually pretty interesting. Like I've heard of some places in Japan with this like specific jobs of being like that type of person where you just throw out any idea, even if it's stupid, just to help other people come up with more ideas. So that's
I
pretty
love it.
cool
Yeah,
to see
yeah, yeah.
that. Um,
Yeah, and in a lot of the brainstorming sessions or idea generation sessions that I facilitated, it's like let's bring in some people who really don't know what we're talking about.
mm,
I remember we were working for one company and they made computer servers, like high security servers that are used by banks
mm,
for all of their transactions. And one of the people that I brought in, she teaches
mm.
improvisational skills, and like she came in thinking that when we were talking about servers, we were talking about like waiters and waitresses, like the people that bring you food in a
Yeah.
restaurant. I'm like, no, 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 different kind of server. She was great though. She was hugely helpful in like helping us break through the challenge that we were working on.
Yeah, some of the assignments we've even done for this class so far is kind of like imagining yourself in someone else's shoes to help figure out your own problem itself. So
Yeah,
that's kind of the same thing, but using the actual person themselves.
yeah. Yeah. Which I think is, I mean, that is just such a great skill, not just for creativity, but also for understanding other people
Mhm.
and leadership, right? So, Dale Carnegie has 30 principles that he talks about in terms of like how to win friends and influence people. And one of them, principle number 17, is try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view, which is great for creative thinking. It's great for leadership and really just life in general, especially when like somebody slights you or what you
Mhm.
think is what you perceive as a slight.
So we've obviously talked about your job and like things
Yeah.
you've been doing now. So like as you are right now, you're not necessarily at a specific place. You're kind of doing multiple different projects and stuff like
Yeah.
that. What would be like one of your like most busiest or productive days you'd say? Like what would you expect to use creativity in like just for one day of your job?
Yeah. Um, I kind of have two different types of days. So
Mhm.
one type of day, mostly these days, is working with groups or teams, either training or facilitation. It's around human development, right? Helping
Mhm.
people be more effective leaders or play better with other people on the teams. And so in that context, like on the day where I'm doing that work, the creativity shows up in terms of um, trying to figure out how to articulate a message such that people will be willing to listen to it, such
Mhm.
that it makes sense to them, such that even better they can discover it for themselves. And so, my days typically look like waking up early, going into a conference room, training room, whatever, and then usually walking through sort of a rough framework of an agenda, more so if it's training, less so if it's facilitation.
Mhm.
And then essentially going through and figuring out, all right, what are our goals here? What are the problems that we need to solve? What are some ways of getting at those so that people understand them? And then how do we help people essentially put together action plans that will allow them to move forward? And so from that context, that's a framework. So that's one of my days. The other kind of day is a day like today, where I'm spending it on the phone, talking to people either in a coaching context,
Mhm.
which is the same thing. Then it's like, hey, what's your goal? What are some of the challenges that we need to work on? What are some ideas around that? How do we move forward into action? Or it's I've been doing a bunch of assessment calls, understanding what's happening in organizations and with other people, to find out what's working, what's not working, how can we do even better. And so there's an awful lot of just being curious and trying not to come to conclusions too quickly.
Mm.
Somebody says something about like, one of the other members of the team, the first place that I want to go is like, oh, that person's a jerk or whatever, or that
Mhm.
person's awesome. And like, usually it's like, that's a small part of the story. And there's other stuff to understand as well, right? Whether it's digging deeper into that or whether it's asking other people the same questions about the same people. So a lot of my time is spent deferring judgment, so that we can truly understand what's happening and what needs to happen.
Yeah, that sounds really helpful of just like a way to help other people be able to see like, hey, this is exactly what you need to do. And not even necessarily exactly, but to help just them slow down their thoughts in a way.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So,
slowing down thoughts is a
mhm.
really nice way to articulate that. I like that.
And obviously that's what you do in your daily job. But what about outside of your job, outside of work? How would you say that you use creativity in just your daily life besides work?
Um,
If it's the same or different, of course.
yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And part of the part of it I think is I don't. Well, there's this cliche that says that you teach that which you need to learn,
Hmm.
right? And so, I think that I got really interested in the creative thinking thing because, like, I wanted to get better at it because it's not one of those things that is naturally a skill set,
Hmm.
right? So a lot of it is sort of trying to figure out like how do I get out of the routine and how do I break that? How do I do something different? Um, so I have a 14-year-old daughter at home. And so when I'm not at work, I'm trying to spend time with her. And so, early on in life, it was just kind of like, playing whatever games she was playing, right? Even when it just got really old and really boring. like, there was this period of time when she was like 3 or 4 where we'd play veterinarian. And so there's like, she'd line up all of her stuffed animals, and then it would be like, she's the veterinarian and I'm coming in with like a teddy bear. And it's like, what's wrong with the teddy bear? And it's like, okay. That's fun the first couple of times. And after like the 400th time of playing it, it's just like, so how do you keep that interesting? And now it's different. Now with a sullen teenager in the house, it's more like, how do you have a conversation when she just wants to grunt in the morning and is tired in the evening? So there's a lot of that. But I don't have any have any habits like writing or painting or any of those traditional things. But I think it's about, like, for me, the humor or the creativity shows up in just trying to make people laugh. Like, I think I'm a relatively funny guy. My daughter says I have too many dad jokes. That's true. They are funny. She says no. But I think it's just trying to make people laugh. I think that's where more my creativity shows up mostly.
Yeah, I think even what you said with the humor, that even shows up in your emails. Like I saw with the mobile tagline kind of thing of like the autocorrect thing, and I was like, that guy's funny right there.
Oh, thank you. Can you
So,
tell my daughter?
of course, she needs to know.
Yeah, good. Thanks.
If you weren't doing the job that you're currently doing, or like the types of things you're currently doing, what else do you think you would do, if it would even be in the realm of creativity or not?
Um, I love that. I love that question, and it's really made me think. I would like to say that I would be designing yachts, right? So, the America's Cup, which is a sailing race, a yachting race, is going on right now. I'd love to design those boats. Although, as we have covered, I can't do math, so that's not going to happen. Not without those things breaking. But I will say this. So last year we designed a little. We designed and somebody else built a little lake house. And I loved that process. And I've always often thought that if I could go back to school and do something different, I'd like to be an architect. Because I think that's, and it's the same sort of thing. It's like, what's the challenge? What's the problem to be solved? What are some solutions around that? And how do we put that together and move that solution forward? So I think I'd be an architect.
Yeah, I've known a few people in engineering, and unfortunately, most of the ones I know kind of left because it can be a very stressful environment. So I do
No
think
doubt.
it would be interesting if they had like some way to do the creativity thing that is why they wanted to go into engineering without all the stress that some people can feel from it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think I think that element of stress, and as certainly, the environment in which we operate has a huge impact on our creativity, and I don't understand people who will create these incredibly stressful environments and just drive people nuts. Right. So, one of my prouder accomplishments in my life, when I was at the Dale Carnegie Organization, they did an engagement survey, and the team that I worked with, we had far and above the highest engagement scores. Like, to the point where the person who was administering the survey said, "I need to interview about what it is that you're doing, because this is remarkable." And for me, it was kind of like, let's meet people where they are. Let's help them be their best selves. Let's help them develop. And let's do everything that we can to take the elements of stress off of them so that they can do great work.
Yeah, because stress can be helpful in some situations,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
deadlines and stuff like that. But too much is whenever, you start to see the creativity drop.
Yeah, exactly right. And so it was about taking away the organizational stress and such that the pressure, if I can use that term, is really about helping them, like, do the things that they wanted to do, like pushing them a little bit further so that they can get even better results. And it was about really understanding, like, hey, what is your motivation? And let's help you achieve that. Like, what is it? Why do you come to work every day? Let's help you achieve that and feel that you're contributing to something that's really important. Because I think that's what it's all about, right? So I talked about the ulcer factory. My goal in life is to, like, create places that are not ulcer factories, but to create great workplaces where everybody can feel like they're contributing to the world.
hmm
Simple as that.
So this is kind of moving on from
Sure.
some of what we talked about, but I was going through your LinkedIn, like scrolling and scrolling, trying to go
Mhm.
far back. And some of the stuff I saw you talk about a few different times was
Yeah.
about AI
Yeah.
and the role of technology. So I was curious about more about your thoughts in the role of technology in business, creativity, and innovation, specifically with like things like AI.
Yeah. I'm kind of torn between like, who knows, right?
Yeah.
I think there's some really interesting opportunities,
Mhm.
right? And there's a meme floating around out there that says something to the effect of like, I wasn't planning on AI doing all the fun parts of my job so that I would have to like, do like clean the house and like wash
Mm.
dishes. Like I'm hopeful that AI will take those things off of our plate, like cleaning the house and, washing dishes. Um, but I think, for me, I think the value of AI is like, how do you get rid of the routinized, algorithmic stuff so that we
Mhm.
can do the work that really enables us to feel like we're contributing.
Yeah, so, like,
Um,
as a tool rather than just doing the thing that you wanna do from it.
yeah, exactly right. And I think all of these things are tools, right?
Mhm.
So whether it's AI or the internet or phones or like all those things are just tools that should be able to help us do the things that are important for us to contribute to our work, our lives, society in general, whatever those things are. And so I think that AI will be very useful in predicting things and anticipating things that maybe we're not good at looking at what are some of the things that we haven't considered. I think that it could be useful in that context.
Mhm.
And my deepest, most sincere hope is that it doesn't replace all the fun things in life. So, and honestly, like, I think that the potential of AI is pretty huge.
Mhm.
And, ask me again in 2 years and my answer will be completely different. I mean, and that's just, it's, I heard somebody from one of the big consulting firms, I can't remember, it might have been McKinsey, saying like, literally AI is changing every day so that the people who are tracking this full time can't keep up with the changes.
Mhm.
And I think that's the biggest challenge. But
Great.
for me, it's like, all right, what's the tool? How can we use it as a tool to help us do the things that maybe we don't want to do or we're not good at? Maybe I can have them help me with calculus, and then I could become a naval architect. Who knows?
Yep, fix the whole, "I don't like math, well, AI can do it for us," type of thing.
Yes, yes.
So, still on the subject of your LinkedIn, and I was going back, and about, like, 9 months ago, what caught my eye was this, YouTube video you linked
Yeah,
called "The Time You Have in Jelly Beans," and I
yeah.
watched the video, and I was just curious about the answer you would have to the question that you posed about how would you spend your life, and if you knew you had 1 day left, what would you do with it?
um, yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a trite answer, but I would spend my time with my family. I would
Mhm.
spend time with my daughter. I would spend time on the water on a boat somewhere. And I don't know. I think it's for me the like I said, the legacy that I want to leave behind is people feeling like they can contribute.
Mhm.
And so I think it would be somehow, if I can't spend it with my family, or if I can spend it with my family, like having people think about what is the contribution that they're making uh, to the world, to their friends, to the people around them. What is it that they can contribute so that they feel like they're leading their life at their highest purpose? I think it would be engaged in that conversation with people who are important to me. And
Mhm.
if they weren't available, then having that conversation with strangers on a bus. I don't know.
Yeah, I was
Not that
also
not
thinking
that I
about
talk to people on buses.
yeah, I was also thinking about how I would answer that myself, and similarly, families
Yeah.
usually I think probably with most people, the first thing that would come to mind, doing the things that you most enjoy in life. But
Yeah.
also I thought it would be interesting just to not do anything different, like, just kinda like how there's this idea of, like, if you knew when you would die, like, what would you do type of thing, like,
Yeah.
would you rather know the date or how you would die type of thing, that kind of would you rather question.
Yeah.
And I've seen the argument about, just living your life how it was because, that's
Yeah.
is your contribution to society. It's just doing things how you wanna do them, and
Yeah.
that is it.
Yeah. And for me, I think like, if I didn't wake up tomorrow, and I had conscious thoughts still, I wouldn't think like, oh man, I wasted my day. Cause
Mhm.
I don't think that's true. I love what I do. I love spending time with my family. I love the work that I do and the contribution that it makes, and what I believe is a difference in the lives of other people. And so I'd keep doing that. right? I really appreciate the opportunity to engage people in conversations that has them think about how can they be even better than who they are.
So, with that idea about engaging people in conversations, that's obviously something that you care about doing. But more specifically, what is a specific product or idea that you believe you're the most proud of that showed off your creativity?
Um, yeah, good. I would say for me, there's a couple, and so in essentially they all sort of boil down to training programs, right?
Hmm.
So there's a few programs behind me from Dale Carnegie that we created that I think are really really good leadership programs. If I had to pick one, though, there was a program that we developed at the Center for Creative Leadership, and it won a Brandon Hall Award, which is kind of like the Oscars for like
Hmm.
training programs, which seems weird and geeky, I know, but that's okay. I'm proud of it. In what that was is essentially it was very different from what CCL, Center for Creative Leadership, did. Up to that point, they had really only done face-to-face training and just like e-learning stuff, which was just kind of like watching videos that were kind of flat. And so we created a cohort-based asynchronous training program that sort of worked over the course of 6 weeks, helping people really reflect on their leadership, thinking about how they can be even more effective, teaching folks some tools, tool set and mindset and skill set around being even more effective. Um, and it was one of those things that it kind of flew in the face of the way the organization worked. And so I remember early on, I said to the vice president who was sponsoring this, I'm like, oh, we got to tell people about this. This is so cool. And she's like, no, no, no. We don't want to tell people about it yet because they'll try and kill it. Because it's not what this organization does. I thought that was kind of weird, but she was right. And so when we rolled it out, it took a long time to sort of like for people to get interested and excited and to start selling it. And then they did. And then when the pandemic rolled around and you couldn't do face-to-face training, people discovered, oh my gosh, we love this program. And so it was the right program at just about the right time. And I think it responded to a need for people to work with other people on their own schedule to learn something new and to be even more effective.
That definitely with like the pandemic, I could see the use of that because I remember I started college when the pandemic hit.
Oh,
So like that was the end of my senior year into college. So that was
I'm so sorry.
very difficult
Yeah.
to be like, oh, you can't actually go to class. So everything had to be Zoom stuff, which again, I was in business, so accounting online was a nightmare. So I'm glad to hear of like programs that actually did work for those kind of things during that type of time.
Yeah.
So that's great to hear.
Yeah, and I think Zoom is great at many things.
Mhm.
It still doesn't create the conversations that happen over the water cooler at lunch, unless it's deliberate. But it was like you said, right thing at the right time.
So you also there's a book that you made that's literally in your background right now about how to make meetings not suck, which is a very eye-catching title, especially with the big "not suck" right there.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about it and your creative process? Obviously, you co-authored it as well, so y'all's creative process behind it.
Yeah, and so I don't know if the book is any good, but the title seems to get a lot of traction. So I consider myself I consider us fortunate that we came up with something that people are like, oh, I'm interested in that. Okay, because it it hits at a area where most people are like, our meetings really do suck, and we need to fix that. So our creative process. So it was really kind of interesting. So I had been we started writing this 20, what year is it? I don't know. So when I went back to when I started my practice in 2020 and started working with teams and organizations across industries and sectors and sizes and all that sort of stuff, what showed up was there's like sort of two common themes that showed up. One of them was around like communication in our organization is terrible, and our meetings are really awful. And so after a while, I'm like, you know what? I think that there's something around this. And so I started to write this white paper. My intention was to write a short white paper and just send it out to clients and give it away for free. And about halfway through the white paper, I realized, oh, there is so much more to this than just a short white paper. And so at the Creative Education Foundation, Kathy Breeze Dobler, who is the co-author on the book, she and I had like developed a course around like effective meetings. I don't remember what it was called. But we had sort of developed a course and developed a training manual with another woman by the name of Hedria Lunkin. And so I thought this should really be a book. And so I reached out to an agent who I knew from some other book projects that I'd worked on. He said, "Yeah, I think there's something to that. We put together a proposal." And I'm like, "Yeah." And so I called Kathy and I said, "Kathy, I got this idea for a book, and I'd love to work with you on it." And she said yes. And it was sort of built off of the stuff that we had done a long time ago. And she and I both have a similar trajectory that we both facilitate a lot as an outsider. We've worked in organizations, managing teams. And so all of that stuff sort of came together. So anyway, so there's kind of like that big goal of like, let's write a book about meetings so that meetings don't suck. And then she and I sat down and started to talk about like, all right, what's the stuff that we know that makes for really compelling meetings? Thinking about the skill sets, thinking about the mindset, thinking about the tools that we both knew. And so we sort of like hashed out a sense of like, here's what the book is, here's what the promise of the book is, here's who it's for, and then we read our book proposal, and our agent then shopped it to some publishing companies. G&D Media said, "Okay, great, we'll do that." And so then she and I built out a full outline, divided up the outline in terms of who's going to write what. And then because Kathy is a raging implementer, like she got it done in like, I don't know, the first day or two. And I, of course, waited until like the day before the deadline. And one of the reasons that I wanted to partner with Kathy is because Kathy gets stuff done. Right. And I know that she like keeps me on track, holds me accountable. And so she's awesome from that regard. So that was kind of our process. So she'd write something, I'd write something. We'd each look at what the other person had written, add, subtract, delete, change, edit. And at the end of the day, like as I look at that, there's almost nothing in there where I can say, "Oh, Kathy wrote that and I wrote that," because I hope it's the blending of our best thinking on that. I don't know. Does that answer the question about our
Yeah.
process?
It actually also reminds me of like this meme of like, oh, this meeting could have been an email.
Oh God, yes.
So that's really great that you kind of touched basically on that meme and actually make it into like, hey, we know that that kind of thing is true.
Yeah.
This is how not to make that happen.
Yeah, and we actually have a little flow chart in there, which is I'd like to go back and rewrite. In the second edition of the book, we'll expand on that flow chart, but basically talking about like, how do you know when the meeting should really be an email?
So, related to the book and your working collaboratively, how would you describe your experiences engaging in creativity with someone else versus engaging it by yourself?
Um, yeah, an important question. I think all things being equal, I'm happiest brainstorming with other people and sort of writing on my own. And I recognize that like I really needed somebody with complementary skills, right? So Kathy and I are both great at asking questions, both really good at generating a bunch of ideas. The whole editing process, which neither one of us likes to do, I think I did a little bit more of the heavy lifting on that. And in terms of like keeping track of the project, keeping track of the marketing, sort of holding us accountable to getting stuff done. Like Kathy really did the heavy lifting on that. So it was about finding complementary skill sets, which isn't always fun, but I think is really valuable.
Yeah. So, what specifically made you be like, oh, yes, she's the person that is complimentary to me for this thing?
Yeah, and really, it was because of my experience working with her on a similar project a long time ago, and we have kept in touch over the course of a long time, almost 30 years. And so I've hired her. She's hired me at various organizations. We both work together at the Center for Creative Leadership right now. We're doing some work for another consulting company together, and so like some of it was just like knowing that she will hold me accountable more so than any of the other people in my life. I think that's true. And she's fun to work with. I love working with her. And I thought it would be a project that she would be outstanding and make big contributions to. And
So this
I think some of it also is the other thing is that like she has experiences and does things and knows things that I don't.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people that I work with who know the same stuff that I do. And that's not interesting to me. I know what
Yeah.
I know. I want to know what other people know.
Yeah, I've heard similar things about like getting to talk to people that aren't in the same career as you or don't like the same things as you,
Yeah.
just like not just expand your creativity, but also just to learn just other things in general, because that can help you. If you only know one thing, you're not gonna know the possibilities that come from
Yeah.
those other things merging with what you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, the power of diversity, whether it's the diversity of experience or thinking styles or where you come from or what you look like or your age, like all of those things, like
Mhm.
diversity is really important for creativity, and that's shown up over and over and over and over again in my work, and it's one of the reasons why I think it's critical.
Mhm. So this is my final question. It's more like
Okay.
just a send-off question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to higher education students to enhance their creative thinking skills?
Ooh. Yeah, I think it would be only one. Can I give two?
You can give multiple.
All right, it's a two part
Mhm.
answer of the same thing. So one of them I think is to really develop the ability to defer judgment,
Mhm.
right, and just really sort of hold open for as long as possible before making judgments, right. Jim Collinson talks about decision making. He says the secret to making really good decisions is to make the decision as late as possible and no later, right? Because the longer you hold open to making the decision, the more likely you are to get good information that will help you make a smart decision. And I think that's true with creative thinking, right? The more that we can sort of hold open before we have to land on that one answer, that gives us better ideas. And I think if we get really good at deferring judgment, then it's about putting ourselves into experiences that are new to us.
Mhm.
Experiencing something new, having a conversation with somebody that you wouldn't normally have a conversation with, getting out of the routine of doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, right? And so, I talk about like travel is one of those great experiences, and I think that's true. And we can't always travel overseas to meet new people, and so there's so many opportunities just in our own community, whether it's going to a new restaurant or going to a different part of town or shopping in a different store or going to a new website. I mean, I think that whole notion of trying something new that you don't know already is really important in getting out of the routine.
Well, thank you for all of the wisdom you shared with me and your
You're
life
welcome.
story. It was really great talking to you. I'm very glad you took the time out of your day to chat and just let me get to know not just you, but your creative process.
Thanks. Can I ask you one question?
Mhm.
So, what do you plan on doing, or how do you hope to apply your creativity?
So that is a really good question. I have thought not necessarily just about the creativity, but about what I want to do, because
Mhm.
I have not made up my mind multiple times. I've like jumped from thing to thing, like business to psychology to educational psychology, and then taking like a gap year between that kind of stuff to be like,
Mhm.
is this really what I want to do? Which I still wasn't 100% when I first started
Yeah.
my master's, but after the first semester, I really liked it. So for me, it's very much of what are the things I like in just outside of school, and can I get that to be a path in the future with career? Because I want to be able to merge the things I'm learning with the things I enjoy. So like
Mhm.
obviously the entertainment industry, like that's one of the biggest places of what people think of when they think of creativity.
Mm.
So like voice acting, that's why I went into business in the first place, because I wanted to start something,
Oh,
some
cool.
kind of business involving voice acting. But obviously, I couldn't stay in the business side of it. So that's a potential dream for me of like merging the creativity of educational psychology with voice acting and the
Mm.
animation industry in general.
Oh, cool. Very nice. I love it. Yeah,
Thank you.
I have a good friend who works for The Simpsons,
Mm,
and it's been fun. He and I did a lot of work together when I lived in Santa Monica, and it was really interesting, just like finding out more about that business and understanding his life.
mhm.
And I am not sure how many decades he's been working for The Simpsons, but it's still fascinating.
Yeah, my younger sister, she's an actress. She was in two training programs for 2 years where
Huh?
she was learning the skills. Which we're in Texas, so there was the Nikki Peterson Talent Agency. So they actually got to go to California and talk to people and do programs with like the Power Ranger, like what are the Power Rangers, and just network as well. So like to get out there and just learn from those people, like, hey, this is potential for you. So I think
Yeah.
those kind of perspectives are also kind of interesting to see.
Nice. Nice. Cool. Well, I wish you the best of luck in that. And those don't hesitate to call if I can help in
Of
any way.
course. It was wonderful talking to you. And I wish you the
Yes.
best of luck as well with all your ventures and other creative projects you have in the future, which I will
Oh,
be sure to look out for looking at your LinkedIn, seeing what kind of new things pop up.
cool. Caitlin, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you as well. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks. You too. Bye bye.
Bye.